Today's guest is a force of nature. If you've ever felt like midlife means decline, buckle up because the man sitting with us today does not believe in slowing down. Coach JC brings the fire. We're going to talk about purpose and vision, and he's going to give you the practical steps and the hope that you need, and we're going straight in.
Strap in. This is a hell of an episode. Well said, Kelly. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Fit Over 50 Life podcast. I'm your host, Mark Patrick, and that lovely lady next to me is my co-host, Kelly Calabrese. We are in for a treat today. Y'all are going to need to strap in today, man. So we got Coach I screwed it up already, man. Coach JC in the house here. He's very low energy, guys, so you need to turn your volume up a little bit. He's very shy. He's very conservative, all the above. Anyway, JC, man, welcome to the show here. We're looking forward to what you are going to teach everybody today. Kelly's going to give a little quick intro on you, and then I want to dive in. I want to hear your backstory first and foremost before we get into this, man. Let's do it.
And he's pumped out. I had to wear red because I know Coach JC brings the fire. So today we're talking about how do we get rid of every excuse and win like a champion. So don't listen if you want to stay the same. This is not the episode for you. So today we are bringing Coach JC, the man, the energy, the fire, the message to wake people up wherever he goes. And if you've ever felt like 50 is declining, well, buckle up because Coach JC does not believe in slowing down. He's the founder of the global Win All Day movement, and he's one of the most in-demand peak performance mental conditioning coaches in the country. And for the past 17 plus years, he's trained more than 500,000 athletes, executives, high performers, including players across all the teams, including Division I, professional ball, Olympic programs, and he's contributed to 17 championship teams. He's a 6-time best-selling author with titles including Win All Day, The Secrets to Real Success, Boom, and The Playbook to Win in Life. So, Coach JC, beyond your books, you're a speaker, you're on America's biggest stages, including opening for the President of the United States. We want to hear about that. Entrepreneur, supplement, apparel company, just incredible. Superhuman. We're so thankful you're here. We can't wait to hear what you have to share with our audience. So welcome to the Fit Over 50 Life podcast.
All day. I am super stoked to be here. Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you so much, Mark. It's an honor and it's an absolute privilege. So thanks for having me, guys.
The podcast is over, man. With your intro, we took up our hour, so we're done, man. So thanks for coming on here. So
I didn't know you were going to read all of that.
Hey, why don't you give everybody, I mean, you got a pretty amazing story from what we call mess to message. Let's talk about that first and foremost so our audience can get to know you a little bit and where you came from and, you know, where your heart's at. So the floor is yours, man.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, everything that Kelly just read, obviously that's happened over time, and I didn't start there. I was raised in New Jersey, the great state of New Jersey. So if you're listening or watching.
There we go.
3 jerseys.
Let's go. Jersey all
3
day.
skeptical people on a podcast. That's our new show, man. So
there you go. And if you're from Jersey, you know, you ask what exit, right? And so I was born in Newark, New Jersey. I grew up down at exit 105, Long Branch, New Jersey. But I was 8 years old when my dad walked out on me, my mom, and my sister. And so I was raised by a single mom. My sister was 2 years older than me. And at a young age, my mom was an amazing faith-based woman, brought us up on great morals, and just did a great job working 4 jobs at a time just to provide, but we still suffered from a monetary perspective. You know, there's a lot of you listening and watching today, right? And you probably on Sunday or throughout the week, you go to a grocery store and to go grocery shopping so that you can eat. I didn't really have that privilege growing up many times. Raised by a single mom. We didn't get to go to the grocery store too often. We typically on Sunday, we went to a local food pantry or the church, and that's how we got our groceries. And I mean, I'll never forget the times that we were blessed to go to a grocery store. But it was always an embarrassing moment for me, right? Mark, Kelly, I remember like we load up the cart. Me and my sister was like going to Disney World. Like we get to pick out our own groceries. This is cool. But there was always the moment that came when you go up to the cash register to actually pay for your groceries. And back in the day, I would see my friends' parents pull out either cash or a check to pay for their groceries. But I'll never forget those moments where I would run away and kind of hide because I knew for my mom to pay for the groceries, she was going to pull out food stamps, the government money. I was always so embarrassed by that. And I'll never forget at 8 years old, like I said, my mom did a great job and always raised us on such great morals. But we moved a lot. We just didn't have the money to stay in certain areas and homes, and we lived in apartments. And there was one season of our life where we were living in a shelter. If you're not familiar with shelters, it's group housing. You live in one big house with multiple families. And I was 8 years old at this time. My dad just left. I remember in the shelter, I was on the top of a bunk bed. My sister was on the lower level of a bunk bed. And I started crying. I was weeping out. And I was just asking the questions, why? Why us? Why me? Why do we have to have life like this? The pain and the suffering and the lack. And I just wanted the Michael Jordan sneakers like everybody else at school. And I'll never forget at that moment, because it was a defining moment in my life. I really didn't know what it meant at that time at all. But at that moment, I really discovered my purpose, right? I'm 8 years old, crying, weeping out. And I knew at that moment that for the rest of my life, that I was going to help stop the pain and suffering in people's lives. And it was going to start right there. It was going to start with me. I was going to be the answer. And I decided 8 years old that I was going to show my dad, we don't need you. Like, I got this. I'm going to become the man of the household. And I'm going to make a lot of money. And I'm going to rescue my mom and sister from this poverty-stricken life. And I was on a mission to do that. Jersey boy, right? White kid from Jersey, probably the shortest on the basketball team. But I decided I was either going to become, at that young age, either a professional rapper or a professional basketball player. And so if you're watching, you're a rap fan, back in the day, it was Vanilla Ice, Ice Ice Baby. That rap career, Mark, it didn't work out for me real well, but basketball worked out for me, and I became an athlete. And it took me in 1999 from New Jersey, a Jersey boy, out to Tulsa, Oklahoma, with big goals and dreams and opportunity to play basketball at a school in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Oral Roberts University. And in 1999, I abandoned the morals that my mom raised us on. I made one decision that radically changed my life. I'm an athlete. There's cute girls on campus. All the athletes are chasing her. And, guess who won this guy? I won the hot girl on campus. But I also, at 19 years old, at a religious school, got her pregnant. And they said, hurry up and get married so that you could cover it up and play basketball. We got married. We're divorced in 8 months, not by my will or my desire. And make a long story short, this is the start of one of the most tragic times of my life. I ended up in a custody battle, fighting to be a dad for 8 years, ended up throwing away my basketball opportunity, ended up $400,000 in debt, suicidal, and just questioning if I even wanted to live on many attempts. Actually tried to take my life. And I'll never forget it. That was a defining moment again in my life when I was reminded of laying in that bunk bed at 8 years old that God wasn't finished with me yet. I enrolled in a Bible school here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I got a hold of Tony Robbins, and between Tony Robbins and personal development and the Word of God, I was able to radically transform my life. I went on to become the youngest strength coach in the nation at the Division I level. Talk about the story of restoration. At 23 years old, I was now the youngest director of strength and conditioning, training athletes at ORU, the school that I came out to play basketball and create an opportunity. And now I was the youngest strength coach actually working with athletes. And from that day on, I just realized basketball was not my identity. I realized that basketball was not my purpose, and I discovered what my purpose was. And ever since that day, I've been on a mission to absolutely help people win and help people stop the pain and suffering in their life. So that's the Cliff Note version of how I got started, man.
That's amazing. When you were talking about that, then you mentioned Tony Robbins. One of the things that came into my mind was Tony Robbins' story about everything with Thanksgiving and stuff. So, and how that inspired him to feed, what has he fed? Over a billion people at this point. It's insane. Obviously, he couldn't do it alone. He had to do it with the help of all his attendees, really, wanting to improve their lives. And then that also helped others there. So phenomenal story. How the hell did you get in $400,000 in debt? And by the way, before this, I was telling Kelly, I was like, that was my tax bill during my divorce there. She's like, but you weren't 19, Mark. Okay. So I said, okay, good point.
Yeah, that's a great question. If you ask my wife now, she came into my life during that time. But I was fighting a custody battle. I fought for 8 years, 19 in 2 different states, in Oklahoma and Minnesota. And the greatest part of my entire testimony is after that fight, my daughter, actually, I got full custody of my daughter when she was 9 years old. She's 24 today, now in life. She's a worship leader down at a church in Florida, but we got to raise her. But I was in a custody battle. The girl that I got pregnant, her family's philosophy was simple. Hey, if you go through divorce, the dad has no rights. So they believed I had no rights. They took my daughter, went to another state. And I went through, I literally say hell. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it was a defining moment, and it absolutely helped make me who I am today. So that debt came from a custody battle, paying attorneys, criminal, getting my name cleared, everything you could possibly imagine. That right now we're actually looking to put that into a movie and actually writing a book on it. So it's that crazy of a story when you tell people they can't even comprehend that it's reality. So.
Wow. Yeah, that story is going to help a lot of people because unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people who could relate to that. There's so many facets to that. And we're both unfortunately familiar with divorce and family division, and that more than half the people go through it and families are impacted. It's not the ideal situation, but we know your story will help so many and give them hope. And that's what you do. So you mentioned your identity was not in basketball, and you say identity before strategy. So what does that mean?
Well, for me, the biggest thing was I was in this identity crisis, right? My story that I created was, hey, I'm going to be the man in the household, rescue my mom and my sister from this poverty-stricken life. And that was my goal. That was my dream. That was also who I believed I was. And basketball is who I believed I was as well. And so when that was taken, and actually I didn't have an opportunity to play basketball, I had no idea who I was outside of basketball. And, I think there's a lot of people probably walking around right now in life, watching this, listening to this. You have a successful business, or if you go to successful business, every business has what you call principles or values, right? Who you are, what you stand for, what you're about, right? I had no idea who that was. When I discovered who I was and where my identity comes from, right? And I started to understand this is who I am. So I'm going to start to make decisions based off of that. I started to radically change my life. And so when I say identity, a lot of times we always try to change behavior. We call it behavior modification, right? I want to change any area of my life, right? I'm over 50. I want to be fit. So I'm going to keep trying to change the diet. I'm going to change the nutrition, right? I think, well, hey, my marriage isn't working. I need to change my spouse, or and my career's not working. I changed my career. And so many times I challenge people to do what I did. Stop focusing on what you need to do right now and focus on who you need to become. And so I always say the who before the do. I think the greatest belief that you could possibly have in this world, Kelly, is a belief in God, the creator of the universe. And outside of that, the second greatest belief you could ever have is a belief in you. And a belief in you and who God created you to be. And so when I discovered that I really wasn't my past mistakes, getting a young girl pregnant, I really wasn't my past failures, possibly throwing away a basketball opportunity, when I realized that my identity wasn't in what I do as basketball, and I started to discover that my identity came from who God says I am, and that I was created in his image, everything started to change in my life. And all that matters is who God says you are. But I will tell you this, identity comes down to also belief. And there's many people walking around today, they have no belief in who they are. And you got to start to understand that you're a child of God, that you're free, that you're a new creation in Christ, that you can do all things, right? That I'm the head and not the tail, and I'm above and not beneath. And I started to believe this new story that maybe, just maybe, basketball wasn't my identity. And here's what I'll tell you, Kelly, you will never rise higher than the belief in you. The most important story that you will ever hear, if you're listening right now or you're watching, is the story that you choose to tell yourself about yourself on a daily basis. And if we're in an identity crisis, every day we look in the mirror and we say, okay, well, this is who I'm not. This is what I can't have. And we don't realize that the power of our words is actually training our subconscious mind to create belief in who we are and create identity. And then absolutely that's who we become. And that's the reality we live. And so the number one thing I did is I shifted who I believed I was, created my identity, and understood where my identity came from. And then I started to take actions to actually become that man and believe that that's who I was. And my life radically changed.
So let's dive a little deeper into that. You changed your identity. What are some of the things that you did to change your identity? Daily practices, affirmations, visualizations, meditation.
Yeah,
what
great
did you
question.
do?
Yeah, great question. And so I would say this. Number one, and I'll do this exercise with you guys. I think it's great for the viewers or the listeners. We are bombarded with 60,000 thoughts a day as a human being. Okay, studies have been proven over 60,000 thoughts come to us on a daily basis. Okay, and here's what the crazy thing about that is. Studies have been shown that majority of those thoughts that come to us on a daily basis are what we call ants, right? Ants, A-N-T, automatic negative thoughts. And so when I work with athletes or younger kids, I'm always like, hey, what would you do if like the little bug, the ant was running around right there? And they're like, oh my gosh, I'd stomp it. I'd say, yeah, you'd stomp it. And so what do you choose to do with the ants that choose to come to you on a daily basis? See, many times our identity is defined by the story that we choose to believe about ourselves. And so one of the greatest things that I learned to do is stop listening and start speaking. So think about this for a second. If the ants are coming on a daily basis to automatic negative thoughts, are they going to come? Yes or no? 100%. You can't stop the thought from coming, but you can kill the ants, the automatic negative thoughts. You can stomp them. And the way you do it is you start speaking and you stop listening and entertaining all the thoughts. Every single day, it's you versus you. And every action originates with a thought. And so the first thing I had to discover is I'm not my thoughts, right? Limits only exist in the mind. Romans 12:2 says, do not be conformed to the things of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. If you can convince the mind, the body will follow. And so I started to understand that death and life is in the power of the tongue. I started to understand that faith comes by hearing. And then I started studying neuroscience and psychology. And I'm reading Romans 12:2 in the Bible. And then I'm in psychology class and they're saying, wait a second. As you speak, your mind can only go in one direction at a time, and it will go in the direction of the most dominant thought. So if you want to change your thoughts right now, if you create a story about who you're not, what you can't have, where you can't go, who you can't become, the quickest way to do it is stop entertaining all the negative thoughts that come to you. Over the 60,000 thoughts, over 80% of them on a daily basis are trying to talk you out of winning. Are trying to tell you who you're not. See, the Bible says the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But thank God the verse doesn't end there. The word of God says, I have come that you may have life and life to the fullest. So I'm telling you right now, the number one thing I did is understood that I've got to stop listening to all the ants, the automatic negative thoughts, and I started speaking. I put together winning confessions. I put together one that's on the back of my shirt right now. How many years later? And I started to say it, even when I didn't believe one word of it. And I used to look in the mirror, and as I would say it, I would stop, and I'd be like, man, you're a fraud, man. You don't believe any of that. Why are you even saying it? But I started just keep saying it and saying it and saying it. As I started saying it, I started to realize the power of what comes out of your mouth. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. So one of the things I did to create a new identity, I stopped talking about my problem. I stopped talking about the mistake that I made. And I started to talk about who I am. I started to tell myself I'm a winner. I'm a fighter. I'm a champion and overcomer. I started to wake up every morning, look in the mirror and say, today is my day. Nothing will get in my way of me being the best version of me. I am here on purpose. I have a purpose. I am strong. I am passionate. I am fearless. I choose faith. I am a winner. I will win and win all day. I didn't believe one of those words. But as I kept saying it, I started to train my subconscious mind. I started to renew my mind, and my reality started to line up with every word that I was saying. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Either you're your worst enemy and you're talking yourself out of winning, or you could become the greatest preacher in your life, the greatest coach in your life, and you could become the greatest salesperson in your life, and you could sell yourself on the new identity. That's the number one thing I did that I can share with you today.
I want to comment on that. You know, the late Trevor Moab, I'm sure you're familiar with him. great book. What's the name of his book? Does anybody remember his book? I read that during COVID, and that really, he talks about saying negative stuff out loud, having a 4 to 7 time multiple of it actually coming true. And he talks about different stories like the Bill Buckner story back in, 86, when he was interviewed on ESPN. And they said, what would be the greatest thing? And Bill Buckner played for, Boston Red Sox when they played the Mets back in 86. And he talked about greatest thing. They interviewed him on what was the thing that would be the most amazing thing? He said, catching the winning out. He said, what would be the worst thing? Losing a ball, and it costed me a game. And sure enough, he put that out there. He threw out the negative thoughts out there, and he put it in the universe. And guess what? He ended up losing, game 6, I think it was. And he also said that he also implemented that in his teams, that no one was allowed to say negative crap out loud as a rule. And I don't know how many wins he had because of that. Amazing. And I kind of butchered that story pretty bad there, but when you said that and then you mentioned athletes, it made me think of his kind of story and what he put together and how that really created championships. So it does work, man. So, okay, so you reprogrammed yourself through saying things out loud to the point where it was BS in the beginning, bullshit, and then eventually rewired your nervous system through combination of probably enthusiasm and full of, just wanting to change. You had the why, so that made a big difference. What else?
Well, I think, before I even get to the why, which you mentioned, because that was a big part of it, I had to start seeing differently, right? I think so many people, and Helen Keller said this best, right? What's worse than being born blind? Having sight with no vision, right? And so the thing that I did parallel to creating a new identity was I started to create a vision beyond what I could just see in the natural. Right? Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Where there is no vision, people perish, right? With no vision, you just wander, right? You just dabble. You're constantly just going every direction. A vision gives you direction. It gives you clarity, right? It brings some hope, it brings some faith. And so I started to write down a vision for my life. Here's exactly what I will have. And I started to, change my perspective, right? Think about the focus for a second, right? Focus feeds your future. Where your focus goes, your energy flows. And so I think so many times in life when we are stuck and we want change, we've got to look at what we're seeing. And I'm not talking about what you see when your eyes are open. I'm talking about what you see when your eyes are closed. And so there's 3 focus patterns that I absolutely changed in my life. I stopped focusing on what I didn't have, and I started to focus on what I do have. Right? I stopped focusing on what was wrong at the moment, and I started to focus on what was right. I stopped focusing on what I couldn't control, and I started to focus on what I can control, and I started to shift my perspective. Okay? And so I started to say, okay, I'm not going to be moved by what I see in the natural. I walk by faith, not by sight. And so I think for the person today listening or watching, I would ask you, what are you seeing for your life? Right? And again, not what you see when your eyes are open, but what you see when your eyes are closed. And so perspective, when you change the way that you look at things, what I discovered in my life, things start to change. And so if you're listening or watching today, what if I was to challenge you and say, hey, the world isn't really how the world is. You don't see the world as the world is. You see the world as you are. And so my encouragement for somebody listening today, the second thing I did is I created such a strong vision of what I would have. And I would put a statement in front of it, I will. And it was get full custody of my daughter. It was this career. It was the body. I just started to write this list, right? And I started to see different. You got to start to see right now, if you're stuck, you want to be more, wherever you're at in life, you got to start to see what you can do that you've never done. You got to start to see where you can go that you've never gone. You got to start to see who you can be that you've never been. And so I believe people tuned in today, possibly just to get their vision back. And so I started to understand that, you know what? I have all these obstacles in my life, but obstacles, hey, from here on out, they equal opportunities. That's a perspective shift. I started to see things different. I have problems in my life right now, $400,000 in debt, identity crisis, what's going on? Whoa, problems? I started to see possibilities. So many people, they see failure. I started to look for feedback. I started to understand that you don't just win and lose in life, you win and you learn. And so I started to shift my perspective. I started to understand that life doesn't happen to you, but life happens for you, right? And I started to repeat in the natural as I'm reading my winning vision. Because of this, something great will happen. Because of me getting a girl pregnant, because of the custody battle, I started to say everything always works out for me. And so I started to realize that you can't always control the events in life. You can't always control the scoreboard, the outcome, but you're 100% always in control how you respond. And I shifted my perspective based around a clear vision of what I would have. I started to get the I am statements, my new identity on repeat. And I started to repeat, I am, all my new identity statements. I started to repeat, I will, all my vision statements. And then I started to shift my perspective and visualize me already having full custody, me as the youngest strength coach, me actually writing a book. All the things that Kelly read earlier, I saw them before I even had them.
Yeah, so you change your beliefs change your thoughts change your actions change your words change the habits, and the habits became the identity. Then you added powerful affirmations, you added visualizations to it. So now no one would ever believe you were suicidal at any point in your life at this moment today. And obviously it's not just linear, like you're better. Life is still kind of, hitting you. So how do you manage when you get that phone call, that unexpected thing that happens, which is going to happen to all of us? Are you always up? Do you grieve? Do you have a down day? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think to answer that question, I'd say this. I deal with everything that everybody else deals with, right? I'm human. And so I would say the thing that I challenge people with, and I say, hey, when people ask all the time, like, what kind of drugs are you on? How much caffeine you drink? I have a saying, if you're juiceful, you're useful. Like, you control your energy. And so I have just discovered through what I've went through and the playbook I put together, and obviously a lot of it's biblically based and a lot of it's through Tony Robbins, that I discovered how to put myself in an emotional winning state every day, right? Life comes down to meaning and emotions. And so many times we're such emotionally driven human beings. And so as I shifted my perspective and I started to realize life doesn't happen to me, life happens for me, I also started to understand how to train, not just physically, but train my mindset. I started to understand how to train my emotions so that before I go into the day, right, I was ready to put myself in an emotional peak state. So this is where most people mess up, Kelly. This is where most people mess up. They go into the day and whatever happens, all of a sudden they're so reactive and they're emotionally driven. And now they're in an argument with their spouse. Their business isn't working out because everything is emotionally driven. When you put yourself in an emotional peak state and you realize that you can train your emotions, now I'm not reactive. I respond and I show up with a clear vision. I show up knowing who I am. And the last thing is I show up on purpose with a purpose. Most people are going around every single day. There's a study that's shown that it says by the time you're 35 years old, most people are living life unconsciously. Meaning basically, most people are awake but not living. Most people are just going through the motions. By the time they're 35 years old, they're just on autopilot. And so I discovered for me that I always have to have a strong mission, a reason. Like our friend said earlier, you had a why, right? And so that was the thing I started to understand, that I'm here on purpose with a purpose, that life doesn't happen to me, it happens for me, that I can't control all things that happen, but I control how I respond. But just as important as that, I went into heavy training, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I started to train and go into the day expecting adversity and obstacles and trials and storms because I knew it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So I started to train so that I wasn't moved by it. And those events actually started to serve me rather than break me.
Wow. And I love that you've taken all of that and you've done so much with it. I mean, when my son was young, middle school years, used to send him care packages of the Win All Day shirts, and he still has them. He still wears them. I've sent you some pictures of him in them. I just was with him recently. He was wearing one. You've sent him books and journals, and they've been so, so powerful. what is it that you're doing with this next generation to bring them up? Because we need to take all of this greatness and make sure it's expanding out into the world. Tell us some of the things you're doing.
Yeah, we have a lot going on. I mean, we actually, we have our Win All Day brand. And so our Win All Day brand has a few different divisions. But the biggest division that we have going on is our high performance coaching, right? Through Win All Day, we have online, we have in person, we go into organizations, companies, first responding agencies, athletic teams, and we build winners. It's high performance coaching. I took everything I did and put it into an actual framework. It's in a playbook. And as we do that, we also have, a program of certification where we actually help other people get certified to actually become a Win All Day high performance coach. And when I say high performance coach, it's life coaching, it's personal development. But here's what I would say. It's designed to help you win in every area of life. It's not one dimensional, right? Like it's body, mind, and spirit. And so we have programs, we go in, we have a speaking curriculum, we have online courses, we do it through podcasts, live coaching, personal mentorship, certifications. And so again, that's how we're doing what we're doing. We built something that works. It's worked with, thousands of people. And so we know that's our purpose and why we do what we do. And so in a nutshell, we build you, and when we help you, after we build you, become a coach. So now you can go and help other people win, and feel what I feel, a life of fulfillment and purpose based around impact. And so it's a transformational partnership designed to help people become their best and help other people become their best. And that's what we believe Win All Day is about.
A good point I want to bring up to this is that when people focus on their own problems, they tend to act a certain way. But when you actually tell them your story of, where you came from, your mess to your message, and you said, maybe what you're going through is designed for a reason, that you're going to get through it, learn what you learn, and then be able to help others. The minute you do that, it's like this major shift goes on in people's heads. They're like, wow, I do have a purpose. I didn't realize it. So that's fantastic what you do for people, man. It really is. So, but you really need to be a little bit more excited. I was expecting a little more from me today, man. What the hell?
Well, I appreciate it. If you're juiceful, you're useful. Come on, baby.
That's
hey,
right.
you said something though. I think purpose is a very big word for a lot of people, and they get stuck there. Right? I've had many conversations with a lot of people, and that's almost a big word for a lot of people. They think, oh my gosh, I never discovered my purpose. Like, why am I on this earth? And there's people that, we're here on a podcast talking to people over 50. It's like, there's a lot of people I interact with, actually a gentleman today over 50, that where is my purpose? And so I think that is a very big question for a lot of people that we help people define. I think people don't need to have this big, crazy, amazing purpose, and they always feel like they're searching for it. I think your purpose is right in front of you. And so many times we miss that. And if right now you're out there and you're like, man, I don't know what my purpose is. What am I doing? I'm over 50. I'm trying to figure it out. Tony Robbins said the greatest force in life is a soul on fire, a life on purpose. When you have purpose, you show up different. That's the number one reason that I have the energy I have. People say all the time, I'm high on life. Right? Think about it. Show me a man or a woman with no passion, and I'll show you a man or a woman with no purpose. When you have purpose, you bring a different energy to the game. You bring a different passion to the relationship, to the business, to whatever it is. And so when you have a strong purpose, I think it changes everything. And so if you're listening, you're trying to struggle with that, I would say this: make your purpose right now 3 things. And this is your purpose statement. If you're listening right now, just general for you. Make your purpose to become the best version of you. Physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Make that your purpose right now. Because what I do know is when you go all in on you and you become the best version of you in those areas, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, a lot changes externally. So many times we're trying to change externally, but all we have to do is really change internally. So 3 things, your purpose statement right now. I'm going to become the best version of me. I'm going to continue to discover and develop my God-given gifts. Everybody has gifts. Continue to just go all in on those and develop them, and then give them back to the world. Okay, that's what you said earlier. So many times we get stuck because it's all about me, 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 me. We don't give enough. You live to give. So if you're struggling right now and you're over 50 and you're like, oh, what's my purpose? What do I do? Make it this your purpose. I'm going to become the best version of me. I'm going to continue to develop and discover and develop my God-given gifts. And then I'm just going to give those gifts back to the world at the fullest. and watch how on fire your soul will be and how excited you'll start to be about life.
Love that. Since we're all Tony Robbins students, one of the things we learned from him was that we move away from pain 2.5 times more than we move towards pleasure. What would you say to the person who, when he talked about being stuck and stopped, that there is a cost to not changing? If you stay the same, if you're not growing, I mean, you're stealing from the world of your greatness. What would you say to that person who's just in that habit, just habitual life?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I would say this, like, God's not finished with you yet, right? And so there's 100% the 5 words that will kill your winning percentage is I don't feel like it. That's 5 words that will kill your percentage. I don't feel like it. So many times when we're beat up in life, we don't feel like doing what we need to do to win. We get comfortable, we get complacent, and we're missing out on our calling. And so the 4-word solution that I know worked for me when you don't feel like it and life's beating you up is act anyway and act now. Like, action cures everything. When you're beat up in life and things aren't going well, so many times we get paralyzed. We stop, we over-question, we overthink, we hibernate, we isolate, and we're like, oh my gosh. And you got to get out of your head sometimes and get into your body. Action creates attitude. See, for most people, their attitude creates what they do, their action. No, you got to make a decision. From here on out, my action creates my attitude. My motion creates my emotion. My movement creates my mood. Life is all about 2 decisions every single day, Kelly. Can I get myself to do what I need to do, even when I don't feel like doing it? And can I not do the things I shouldn't do when I feel like it? That's why you have to have a strong mission. You have a clear vision. You got to know who you are and have principles. And you got to be committed to that and make that commitment trump your feelings. Because listen to me, we're all going to face adversity and obstacles and trials and storms, and we're not always going to feel like what we need to do. And if you constantly continue to make decisions based off of feeling, you'll never win. When you have commitment and you have the mission and you have the purpose and you have the clear vision identity, that's when you can fight through the delays and the disappointments and the distractions of life. That's when you get up after the pain or the setback or the obstacle. That's when you keep showing up through the storms of life. And so I would just encourage that person, God's not finished with you yet, and you've got to be committed to act in the midst of and stop making decisions based off of how you feel at the moment.
I want to add to that most people wait for this magical word called motivation to kick in before they do something there. First of all, if you look on the wheel of emotions, it's not even on there, and there's 300 different emotions on there. So as far as I'm concerned, motivation or the lack of it or the want it is complete bullshit. It's
motivation. We talked. What you just said is key, right? I just said earlier, you can't make decisions based off of feelings. Yeah. Motivation's feeling, and motivation.
Your brain's
it's good
to protect you from perceived pain, and anytime you make change, that's going to be pain to the brain, and it's always going to spotlight things. And if you failed the last time, it's going to say, "Don't do it this time." But what you're really teaching people and making people aware of, between identity and values and all that, is they're looking for inspiration. And when you're inspired towards something, you wake up early, you stay up late. You don't need to punch a clock. You don't need somebody to check up on you. And everybody, I believe, is inspired towards something in their life. It just may not be towards their health at the given moment, or it may be a different set of values in their life. So pretty darn well said, man. Excellent for a young guy, 40-some years old here, man. Yeah. Not bad, okay? A lot of wisdom there.
Well, I'm just glad you put that out there, because you said this podcast is for over 50. I didn't want everybody thinking I'm 50 already, so I'm glad you put that out there.
Nah, he's a young guy. We let a couple of youngins in every once in a while because they got some good stuff to say, and you definitely have some good stuff to say, man. Don't worry, you'll get there. Don't blink, you'll get there, man. So it goes fast, okay?
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, in last week's podcast, we had a guest who talked about frequency, who is a natural healer, and that our bodies are energy. And you just exude so much energy, so much fire, and it radiates out into the world. And I know that opens doors for you. Speaking of which, you had the opportunity to introduce President Trump. Tell us about that story and how that happened.
Well, let me just take you back really quick if we have like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Take your time, man.
Let me take you back really quick because it'll make sense how this all happened. But when I was going through that actually custody battle that I mentioned earlier, I'm out here through my basketball opportunity. My daughter was actually in Minnesota. I'm in Oklahoma. And so every other weekend, I was driving to Minnesota 12 hours just to see my daughter. And I would drive up, 12 hours. I would leave at 5 a.m. I would get there at 5 p.m. I'd pick her up at the local Walmart. I'd hang out with her. And then Sunday at 1 p.m., I would return her. And then I would drive back to Tulsa and get home at 1 a.m. And then I would get up to be the strength coach. And I did that for 4 years, every other weekend. And so as I'm doing that, that's kind of the visitation that you get assigned when you're in this weird custody battle thing. And I went up there one weekend, just like another weekend, down and out, just desperate, no hope and just helpless and not a lot of money in my bank account. I remember it was like yesterday. I was struggling to even get up there. I borrowed money from my mom. I get up there. I show up at the local Walmart. All I was living for at that moment was just to see my daughter. Like, that's all I want to do is be a dad. And so I get up there after a 12-hour drive. I show up to the local Walmart, and all of a sudden, I'm just waiting. And I'm waiting, and 10 minutes passes, 15 minutes passes, and all of a sudden I discovered and realized, wait a second, they're not bringing my daughter. They never showed up with my daughter. I'll never forget it. Desperate, down and out, not knowing what to do. I just decided, hey, there's nothing I'm going to do here. I'm just going to get back in my little 5-speed Nissan Sentra, and I started driving back to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And on my way back to Tulsa, Oklahoma, this was a very low moment in my life. I'll never forget it. I'm going through the dark roads of Iowa on my way back from Minnesota to Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's dark roads. It's like 1 a.m. in the morning. Nobody's on the roads. And I start going a little faster. And all of a sudden I'm weeping and I'm crying. And I started to just question, like, why are you doing this? And I started to have that conversation with myself. Maybe your daughter's better off without you. You have no purpose. Look what you did. You let your mom down. You let your sister down. Maybe the world's better off without you. And so I start pushing, right, the pedal to the metal, and all of a sudden I'm going over 100 miles an hour. I'm having this conversation with myself, bawling and weeping, and I start swerving off the side of the road, contemplating taking my life. And I remember yelling at myself, just do it! Just do it! Don't be a coward! Just do it! Your daughter will be better off without you! And I'm weeping, I'm crying, I'm swerving off like a madman. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I hear sirens. Okay, I get pulled over by a police officer, an Iowa State trooper. And he walks up to my vehicle, knocks on the window of my car. I roll the window down. I'll never forget it. I remember his face. It's just so vivid to me because it was a defining moment. And the first words out of his mouth were, young man, what are you trying to do? Kill yourself? And so I looked at him and I made eye contact. I said, actually, officer, that would be great right now. And this police officer took the time at that moment to not take me out of the car, impound my car, arrest me, which I learned later in life. He probably could have did all of that if he was just doing his job. But he stood there and he started to just hear me. He said, what's going on? And when you're just desperate, you just share everything. I start sharing everything. I'm telling him about my custody battle and everything. And all of a sudden, after a few minutes, he looks at me in the eyes and he says, I want to tell you something. You don't know me. I don't know you. But everything you're going through, it all had to happen. And I remember the first emotion I got was anger. I was like, what? It had to happen? Like, this is before I went through my transformation. I'm still trying to figure stuff out. I'm down and out, hopeless and helpless. And I'm like, it had to happen. He's like, listen to me. God has a calling on your life. You're going to do great things. Just get back to Tulsa safe and never forget that it all had to happen. And one day it'll make sense to you. And I'm like, wait, what? So this guy lets me go. He follows me for the next 2 or 3 miles. He said, just go the speed limit. I remember going back to Tulsa. I'm driving the speed limit and it just was replaying through my mind. It had to happen. It had to happen. What does that mean? I don't understand what it means. And all of a sudden I get back to Tulsa. I go to sleep. I get up to be a strength coach in the morning. I get home that day after work. And this was my first interaction with Tony Robbins. I opened a book that somebody gave me, Awaken the Giant Within. And the first words I read in the book were, the meaning of anything in life only has the meaning you choose to give it. It was at that moment that I said earlier, my perspective was a big part of my transformation, that I shifted my perspective. And I stopped playing victim and started to walk in victory. And I started to realize maybe it all had to happen. Life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And so that interaction alone radically changed my life. And that's when I started to shift my perspective that I talked about earlier. Now, fast forward to 2015. I'm having some success. We're training pro athletes. We're doing a lot of cool things. The books are out and I'm loving what I'm doing. And all of a sudden, God put it on my heart that we were going to start serving first responders. We launched a nonprofit called Fit First Responders, Fit for Duty, Fit for Life in 2015. We do these huge transformation challenges. We give away trucks. We bless these guys, but we bring them in and we help them be fit for duty and fit for life. It's all the framework that I do through Win All Day, but it's specifically for first responders. Now, fast forward to Donald Trump coming to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to the Mabee Center, and they call me because I have a nonprofit. The media calls me and they say, hey, hold on. Donald Trump, future president candidate's coming to Tulsa. And we want to get a statement from you. He keeps talking about police officers and you work with police officers. So I made a bold statement. And I said, listen, if you want to make America great again and you're listening, Donald Trump, anybody out here is listening, the number one thing we have to do is bring back the respect and the dignity to authority, and especially our law enforcement officers. When I was growing up in Jersey, man, we respected them and we feared them, and that's lost, and that's bad for our society. So his team hears this interview, they get a hold of it, they contact me and my team, and they're like, we want you to come open up for Trump. Can you get on a private plane? Can you come to Little Rock, Arkansas? And the next day I flew with my wife, my daughter to Little Rock, Arkansas, and opened up for the President of the United States in front of 15,000 people in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I said all of that and took you back because there's never a wasted season. If I never went through that situation with that police officer, which my mom believes was an angel, I would have never started the nonprofit. Today, we've worked with over 4,000 first responders. We now have our veterans division, 78 different agencies, helping them be fit for duty and fit for life. And it led to that opportunity to open up for the President of the United States.
Y'all out there listening to this and watching this, because I know there's a lot of people right now that are lost, especially in their 50s, okay? There's going to be signs. You got a hell of a sign that wore a uniform, but he channeled God into your life and in the most amazing way, and you had a bigger purpose. And that purpose needed to be served. And if it wasn't for that most painful moment of not being with your daughter and literally feeling like the biggest loser, wanting to kill yourself, that I don't believe everything would have turned around and you'd be where you're at today. That is a phenomenal. So how cool was it when you were sitting next to your wife and you're like, yeah, we're going next to see Trump here. So on the plane, that was pretty cool, huh?
Oh, it was just incredible. It was so surreal.
That is so awesome story. I got goosebumps, man. So when you were telling that story, so
that's amazing.
Yeah, it really is cool. So hopefully people are listening to this and watching this, and if they're down, realizing that they're going to get signs. You got to trust your intuition. Yep. People are going to be telling signs. The sign could be you're here today.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's good.
Could be Coach JC here today, man, in your life at the right time.
Yeah, for sure.
Just got to be open.
I don't know if you've heard this before, but there was a sermon series that Stephen Furtick did, and two of the sermons changed my life forever. One was called It Had to Happen, and it just pierced me. And then the one that followed that was called I'm Glad It Happened.
Ooh,
and
wow.
it was like, whoo. And if you listen to the stories, I mean, people have had some hard things happen.
Yeah.
You know, some of the things were things they asked for. They just didn't think it would look this way.
No, man.
But then at the end, when you can see it with the foresight, you're like, you know what? I'm glad that happened. Like I wouldn't take it back. We had a guest on that due to medical issues, she lost a limb. And Mark asked her the question, like, if you could take it back and you could have your leg again. She goes, no, I wouldn't have the ministry. I wouldn't have the nonprofit. I wouldn't be helping the people. And so in hindsight, you know, looking back, it's like, yeah, it had to happen. And I'm glad it happened because it made me the man, the woman, the person that I am today.
Come on. 100%.
Yeah, I think the perception of pain in this country or in society or in the world is that it's the worst thing in the world. pain is inevitable. And I've heard this in numerous Tony Robbins videos that pain is inevitable, but suffering is not.
Yep. Huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is an amazing, amazing, amazing story, man. That's phenomenal. So,
and your humility is rare because you do have success in the world right now, and you are so on fire. I know the answer, I think, but what keeps you so humble with the levels of just opportunity and success that you have?
Yeah. I always get emotional, like when I talk about this, because that question is, and I wouldn't say it's right or it's wrong to do. And everybody has to have personal conviction on it. But, my mom growing up, she always believed very strong that everything was going to work out. And I watched that. But we would pass like a homeless person or somebody that was struggling. And even though we were struggling, my mom would always say something along the lines of, you never know. We could just be one decision or one step away and being in that situation. So we always want to show love, and we always want to show compassion, and we always want to show empathy and just mercy and grace. And so that's what drives me is, I think people are always going through something. And so I just have a heart for people. I know what I went through and the low time I went through, and I'm always reminded of what my mom said. And even when I pass a homeless person, I can't help but stop to give them $1, a winning word, a meal, because I just think, JC, you could be one decision one day and being in that situation. And I think you've got to find what drives you. And what drives me is, the 2 greatest commandments: love the Lord your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. And so I love people with everything inside of me. It doesn't matter what color, it doesn't matter what your political view is, it doesn't matter, where you're at economically, that I just love people. And the thing that drives me is people, and the mercy and the compassion and the empathy, and that statement my mom would always say, that I show up with such humility to know you never know. Life is tough. You can make one decision in business or over here, and something could happen over here, a tragedy where all of a sudden that's you on that corner homeless. And so extend the mercy and grace to other people that you would want extended to you, and be the hands and the feet of Jesus Christ and God right here. Never miss a moment. So every time I show up, it doesn't matter if it's on a podcast, it doesn't matter if it's in a grocery store, gas station, I'm constantly reminded that I'm not here by mistake. I'm not here for Coach JC, but I've been placed here, right? I'm on assignment. I'm here on purpose for a purpose. Don't miss what God wants to do through you and in you in this moment, in this situation. And maybe, just maybe, one word, maybe one hug, maybe something you dish out at that moment could be the game changer in somebody's life, right? It's free, right? Dishing out love and hope, it's free for us. But I think the impact it could have on people is just absolutely priceless. And so, Kelly, that's what drives me. That's what drives me every single day. It's not about Coach JC. My mission, my purpose is about other people. And I love people, and I want to see people win at the highest level. So,
yeah. And it applies to every area of life. It's your marriage, it's your health, your fitness, it's your relationships, your parenting, all of these tools that you teach can be applied to any area of life, because we all have areas that we've got the balls in the air, and then there's other areas where it feels like the balls are dropping. And I would love to tell everyone about your resources, where they can get them, what's the best way for them to get connected to you.
Yeah, so CoachJC.com, that's my personal brand site. And then we also have www.thewinallday.com. That's kind of our hub where you can find more about the coaching and the certification. And then obviously social media, Instagram at @thecoachjc. And also I would say this: if you're at a place right now where you need a little hope, or you want to learn how to train your mindset and walk through some of our principles and our framework, we have an amazing podcast. We interview amazing guests, but also every day of the week, or I should say Monday through Friday, I drop a quick 5-minute winning word of the day. And that's Win All Day with Coach JC. That podcast is probably the best place for anybody to start to learn how to renew your mind, and create purpose and walk out a winning life. So CoachJC.com, thewinallday.com, social media at the Coach JC, or the Win All Day podcast with Coach JC are some good resources.
That's awesome. I follow. I know my son does. Every once in a while, he'll send me something that Coach JC said. So the ripple effect is huge. It's international. We're so thankful for it. And Coach, this was pure fire. You are waking people up. You are just stirred our listeners in every way. I'm sure people are just leaning in and not just lit up. And this wasn't by an accident, but they really will be rethinking their identity, their vision, their purpose. I hope they go back and this is an episode that they re-listen to many times and share it with people. And just thank you for the momentum that you've created by coming on our show today. We hope people get plugged into everything that you're doing.
Well, I'm so grateful. It's good to meet Mark, Kelly. I'm so blessed to have you in my life. We met years ago and so blessed to just be in your son's corner. Absolutely love you guys. Obviously Italian from Jersey, so I'm a little biased because of that. But always just loved your presence and love who you are and love your calling on your life, and give your son my love as well. Thank you, Mark, so much.
You're living where now? I think I missed that.
I'm in Tulsa.
Still in Tulsa? You're still in Tulsa. Okay. I think I was there once or twice doing some seminars. It's nice, quiet. I do watch Tulsa King with Stallone. I do.
Oh, yeah.
We love that show.
Oh, yeah.
I was telling Kelly that before. What do you miss about Jersey besides the pizza?
Oh, yeah, family and the food, man. That's it. Family and the food. And you know what? I am a big beach guy. You know, I love the beach. But yeah, the beach, walking on the beach and running on the beach and just year round. But yeah, you can't beat the food and just the Italian culture, the family culture. It's just different. Yeah. It feels different, right? So food, family, and the beach, my man.
It's definitely different. I would say I've traveled a lot of places, and probably to this day, my favorite vacation spot would be Cape May and Wildwood, because it was just so chilled down there. Outside of the Philly fans there. No offense to you guys, but you guys are
I'm with you on that.
Whiny bitches all the time. So
I'm with you on that, my man.
Yeah, so, but outside of that. Coach JC, man, you walk the walk, talk the talk, man, and you are an amazing individual. I'm thankful to have you on our podcast here. Thank you for sharing. Hopefully everybody got something out of this podcast today that you could take and apply to your life and live a healthier lifestyle. In the meantime, that is a wrap. Thank you all for tuning in. We will see you all on the next episode. Bye-bye now.